writer at the Chicago Sun-Times. I do a lot of arts and entertainment. I also cover a lot of comedy. And this is the first of what I hope will be many comedy hangouts here live from the Sun-Times studio. You can see part of the newsroom behind us. My guest today is Thom Britton. Thom is a sideshow historian. He holds a degree in applied sciences from Le Cordon Bleu, so he's also a chef. This love of science and history forms the basis of many of his productions. Thom has worked at the Lyric Opera House, performing circus acts, fire eating, and puppetry in 3 of the Lyric's productions. He has toured the U.S. and Canada extensively, performing in colleges and small hall theaters. And he's opened for bands like Green Day, Linkin Park, Stone Temple Pilots, and the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones. Thom does a fantastic show called Freak Show and Tell, which I saw recently. Last time I saw Thom, he was face down in a pile of broken glass shards. We'll get to that later. But it's critically acclaimed. It covers his very personal journey into the world of the circus sideshow. It's 1 part lecture, it's 1 part performance art. It's a 70-minute examination of the American freak show from a scientific, historical, and a personal perspective. Thom's also the co-founder, along with Charlene Numerick, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, yeah, of Illinois Variety Arts, which is a not-for-profit organization that's dedicated to promoting, preserving, and performing variety arts in Illinois. It also funds shows, offers classes, and provides educational and historical lectures about all aspects of the variety arts. And Thom is now working on trying to open a variety arts theater in Chicago, which we'll also talk about a little bit later. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure.
I appreciate it. Like
the pilot program.
The pilot program. That's like I said, last time I saw you in this amazing freak show and tell at the No Exit Cafe, yeah, part of your act was you face down in a huge pile of razor-sharp glass shards. And I know you've been doing a lot of this for years, the fire eating, the glass walking, and there's also the human blockhead element, yep, of your act. But the twist to the show that you do is it comes from a scientific perspective.
Yeah.
Maybe we can talk a little bit about that show and then back up and tell people how it all began. Yeah. So, Freak Show and Tell, you've described as your vegetables in terms of, you know, the performing plate. It's not the meat, it's not the dessert. So maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. It's everything I like in one show. It's smooshing my nerdy interests together. Yeah. So I'm a big history nerd. I'm a big science nerd. And then I love and have performed science circus sideshow since I was 16, and I'm 40 years old. So it's a significant chunk of my life.
The 2 main points I want you to take home with you: thermolag and embouchure. You understand these, you do. You've just never heard the names. Thermolag, you did this in 4th grade. Ooh. If you're in 4th grade, this is amazing. Or if you're really high, this is amazing. What?
So I smooshed it all together into one show, Freak Show and Tell. And the idea was to start with in fact, when I first started, there was no performance in it at all. It was a collegiate lecture examining the Freak Show, covering the 4 classic acts and the personalities that did them, based on Spalding Gray. Entirely Spalding Gray, but instead of an alcoholic mother with suicidal tendencies, I had a fire-eating dwarf who taught me to eat fire.
Right.
So we would sit at a table, we'd open our notebooks, and we'd talk for an hour. As I started doing it, I thought, well, I'm a computer nerd. I can mix in multimedia elements. I have all this great video of Little Pete Ahern eating fire, or Deaf Freddy doing a human blockhead. These great videos.
These are the veterans of the industry.
Yes, and the people that most directly sort of I learned from watching them from the audience at least.
Yeah.
If not a lot of direct contact, I learned a lot about fighting watching Fred perform. And then it occurred to me late after I'd written the entire show, oh, you know what, I should probably just eat fire. Since I can't, it was costless for me to go, oh, well, you know what, actually, instead of showing a video, why don't I just do the damn thing, and then we'll be done with it.
So again, I invite you to watch step 1, eat the fire. Incidentally, for the ladies, you do not have to grow a beard, but I am showing off. And if you watch the show, you can kind of see that, because it's 80%
let's examine the sideshow and its players and its history and its place in American culture and its little subculture.
Right.
Which is that it's a lowbrow art form like professional wrestling or tractor pulls. Or the rodeo is a really close relative because they both have a culture. They both have people traveling with them.
Yeah.
And that gives you a culture. And the culture is what's interesting to me. The secret language, the secret handshakes, the mom, the dad, the kids, the cook stuff comes from that could be examined.
These are not parlor tricks to you, though. This is very serious art form to you. This is you don't consider yourself a carny of any sort.
I mean, yes and no. I mean, it's sort of like if you did an academic examination of rodeo. You do have a foot in that world. And as much as I want to examine it intellectually, I don't want to get so far from it because the fun is guttural.
Right.
The fun is I'm going to freak you out. And the posters, if you see the artwork I use, I unapologetically use that kind of carny artwork.
Yeah.
Of step right up, boys and girls. Behold, behind the curtain, you will not believe.
Yeah.
That part of it is fun and certainly was what drew me to it. So I have to be careful.
Yeah.
Not to get too far up in my ivory tower and kind of lose that idea of like I forget that fire eating is interesting to people because I've done it since I was 16. Half the people in my world eat fire. It's the least interesting thing you could do at a party.
Right.
Why can't I think of anything less interesting to do at a party?
Someone once said of one of your the masters who taught you, Melvin Burkhart, that a huge part of his act was the patter, was the comedy within the act, and over the years you were able to master that. Was it harder to sort of infuse your act with that element and master that element, or the actual pounding stuff into your nose and eating fire and? Oh,
the script's definitely harder.
The script's harder.
Definitely harder because at a certain point you've the physical aspect, like take fire eating, which I guess people have seen, but if you can't, you can imagine it. You light a torch, you put it in your mouth, you close your mouth, the torch goes out.
Right.
At a certain point, you have learned that. There's a max level to that trick where I can do it as well as anyone else because it is just put it in your mouth and close your mouth. So then how do you differentiate yourself?
Step 2, chew the flame. Tell you what I love about my art form. So, I tend to hide away in very difficult to find and quasi-legal theater spaces. It's what I do. I like it, I think it's cool, it's a little bit punk rock, and I'm kind of reliving my youth.
And it's all the packaging. It's what you choose to wear, what you choose to say, how you choose to present it, the lefts and rights, and it's the same thing with comedians. How many comedians have you heard talk about a president? And then you hear, Louis C.K. is a great example of this. Everyone talks about their kids and their wife. He takes a left at Albuquerque you do not see coming.
Yeah.
So he can do what any other comedian would be considered hack material. He could probably talk about airline peanuts. Or what's the deal with, but when Louis C.K. does it, he intentionally, I think as a writer, keeps at it until he's like, there's the original hook.
Exactly. That
I haven't seen done by a million other comedians before. With variety arts, it's a little tougher. Because eating fire has been done by even more people. I mean, as much as we mock the airplane premise, it's because really Johnny Carson, Jay Leno, and a few others that are so incredibly famous did it. It wasn't actually every comic on the road. Fire eating is every circus sideshow, all of them, ever. So I'm competing with not just the best, but then all the chaff does the same trick. So you really have to work on your script.
Before you started doing this, I mean, how many shows did you take in of people like Melvin Burkhart and Pete Terhern, and before you decided, I want to do this?
I got to see Melvin Burkhart perform 8 times, and then come back the next day
as a human blockhead.
His whole act, the Anatomical Wonder,
Anatomical Wonder, right?
But Human Blockhead was part of it.
Right.
But his 30-minute set, they do vary between 15 and 30 minutes, depending on his mood. He was an older guy even when I saw him. He was in his 80s when I saw him the first time. But then I came back the next day and saw him 6 times, and the next day and saw him 7 times. The next day I saw him 7, 8, 6 times. So I got to within a week experience 50 performances, and so you feel like you spent 10 years with the guy. So I was able to soak up, and at that age you steal a lot. Every comic kind of starts as I'm going to be Mitch Hedberg or I'm going to be Louis C.K. Then you find your own voice.
Right, right.
Same thing with Melvin Burkhart. I was very much aping his act.
How much personal interaction did you have with him? I know Pete Terhern is another one who actually taught you, but Melvin?
Yeah, a
Talk
bit.
a little
He was
bit?
a personable guy. He
Was he?
liked to hold court. He liked to lecture a little bit.
Yeah.
There weren't a ton of us. There aren't a ton of sideshow nerds.
Yeah.
So maybe 2 or 3 people to talk to at a time.
So he just saw you there time after time after time?
Time after time. And then I
eventually-
also performed at a sideshow, so I had kind of the secret club card.
Right.
Of like, well, I'm working down the street and I do a couple of these acts. He goes, oh, well, stick around. I'll do a. Yeah, he did a lot of magic tricks in his set. So he goes, I'll show you a piece that kills every time. So he showed me like some surefire stuff.
Okay.
He had a little dice trick that he would do.
Call the back of it 4 and 2, so you can see what's on the front and what's on the back. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, now what I'm going to try to do, though, is make you think that what you don't think you didn't see is what you're not looking at again. 5 and 3 here and 5 and 3 here. Actually, if you had 4 and 2 right here and 4 and 2 right here, you couldn't have 5 and 3 over here.
I love that video.
And so he taught me that. He's like, this has never failed to kill. And so as a 17-year-old boy, anything that wouldn't fail to kill,
Right.
is wanted. And unlike the example of Jerry Seinfeld, I could just lift Melvin's bits. He would give them, no, you should do that, and you make sure you say this at this time, and
Right.
God bless, have a good day.
Right.
Whereas Jerry would be, meeting me afterwards like, hey, that's my joke. What are you doing?
What is it? You always hear rock stars talk about, I got into this for the chicks.
Yeah,
Was that part of it when you got into it? As a 17-year-old, this was purely for the passion.
But
for
it
the love of
did.
the
It did
game.
actually work because when you are on stage, there's a thing. People like competence. This is why the bass player in a rock band who's making $8 grand a year has a girlfriend.
Yeah.
She was attracted to competence. She saw a stand-up comic or a poet or a bass player in a band, or a chef, and you think, wow, he's good at something.
Yeah.
That's very attractive, I think, to men and women. And so, yeah, I do remember in high school there being a certain sheer point where it went from like the nerdy guy having difficulty to the nerdy guy like, oh, I got a girlfriend. But I think that was something I could show them a piece of me.
Yeah.
I could show them a bit of my soul. I think that's attractive to people. When you go, come see my art, that's an attractive pitch for people, no matter what the art is, no matter how weird the art is.
Sure.
Unlike comic books or something that's a bit more personal.
Exactly.
You could say, come see me on stage.
Well, this is coming from within you, too.
Yeah. And then as I got better, it helped.
Yeah.
As you get funny or you develop humor or a twist where they go, wow, I've never seen anybody eat fire like that. Or I've never seen anybody swallow a sword before. It makes for good date conversation.
Was this, when you were young, was it purely a pastime, something that just sort of drew you as an interest, or was it an escape and sort of
Summer
purgative
job.
thing?
It was the most fun summer job I could get.
That's okay.
That's not that I didn't love the sideshow. I went and sought it out.
Yeah.
And
your dad drove you to these, right?
And he has 7 kids to deal with. I'm one of 7.
Yeah.
So it's really a testament to him. When spending an hour driving one child somewhere is not economical. You'd rather drop them all off at the pool than come pick them all up.
Yeah.
So to have one child with this outlier hobby that no one else was even remotely interested in, not even a little bit. One like me and my brother went. Never. Me alone. To drive me out, drop me off, come back and get me later. Or to trust me to go on for 2 months.
Yeah.
To go with the circus.
For
It's
2
fun.
months.
2 months.
At what age?
Yeah. 17, 18.
17,
I mean, so old enough, but just barely.
But
It
he
depends
was
on the
very
17, 18-year-old guy.
encouraging,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
the nice thing about finding your love, and this is what I try to make the point about Melvin Burkhart too. At 16 years old, he found his passion.
Yeah.
It was just a weird little passion, but stamp collecting is too. Even weirder in a way. No one wants to watch you collect stamps. Someone might want to watch you do this 30-minute anatomical wonder routine. At 16 years old, by the time he's 18, 19, it's settled. The same way it was with me. I never have to worry again in my life at 40 years old. I've never had to worry, what am I going to spend my money on? What am I going to spend my time doing? Oh, gee, I'm bored. It's not a phrase that's ever passed my lips.
Yeah.
I'm working on a bullwhip routine right now. I'm working on a unicycle and a high wire routine. They're not done. They're not good. The minute I wake up and go, what am I going to do? Oh, you know what? I'm going to go crack my bullwhip.
There's always something.
Because I still suck at it. I need to get better.
Yeah.
And there's always, it's a pit. It's the same thing but it could be fixing a car. You can always go buy an old VW.
Right.
And there's your money pit. There's your time pit.
Right.
But it's engaging. It's fun. I think hobbies are vastly underrated in our culture.
I think they are too. I read something recently from Woody Allen. He says the most we can hope for in life is distraction.
Yes. Yes.
He even said love is a distraction.
Yeah.
But I don't. He wasn't talking about it in a bad way. He was just saying that we need stuff to occupy our time and enrich ourselves.
Frank Zappa said, without music to punctuate the moments, life is nothing but the drudgery of paying bills and waiting to die. I think I've mangled that quote a bit, but it's, without something.
How long did it take you before you encountered Pete Ahern, who was another one besides Melvin Burkhart? Were you fairly young still when you went to see the Fire
18,
Eater?
19, 17, 18, somewhere in there?
Yeah, he was
very young.
What was his nickname? Poobah?
Little Poobah.
Little Poobah.
Little Poobah. P-O-O-B-A-H. Little Poobah. Pete Ahern, who we lost, 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, pretty recently.
Very recently.
Melvin died in 2001. But Pete died recently.
Pete and Ward Hall, who was the employer, Hall and Christ, CM Christ and Ward Hall, is working on a book on Kickstarter that you can find. And Little Poobah was with him for many, many, many years. I think 50 years or so.
Kind of a gruff guy, but he took you under his wing. Right?
Not so much. It was more watching him work. He didn't talk a lot.
Oh, okay.
He wasn't a talker. My favorite thing about Little Poobah was he had his routine that he had been doing by the time I got there for a million years. I don't even know. And you could professor the act, meaning I talk and you do. So you're on the stage and you're eating fire. And you had your pattern, your script, and he would do movements to it. So, for example, at one point he would go, he's got them both lit, and he goes, one tastes like chocolate, one tastes like vanilla, though he can't tell which is which. But he's willing to share. And he would reach out to someone, and he would waggle his eyebrows at them. I can't do it. He could do it very fast. Now, if you didn't do those lines, didn't matter. He did the same actions.
Yeah.
For no reason. Because now you're talking about something else. He did not vary. It was my favorite thing to watch about him. Just an ornery old man. No, I'm doing the chocolate and vanilla. I don't care what that kid's saying. But he would just reach out to the audience for no good reason.
Right.
You had to provide motivation.
It was so rote, in other words.
He just didn't feel like changing.
He should feel like changing.
He's been doing it for 40, 50 years.
But you've always, you've told me, too, that's an important part of your show. Everything is in its place. And the only thing that really freaks you out is like if there's a new lighting person or something. And you're, it's not the swallowing fire or putting something in your nasal cavity. It's that variable.
That's the advantage of doing sideshow, too, is you do 13 hours a day.
Right.
So you very quickly get comfortable with whatever physical thing you're doing. So if you're walking a sword ladder, you may be nervous the first 10 times, but that's half a day. Now you've got the rest of Monday to be comfortable. By Wednesday, you're an expert. So now you have to worry about everything else. Am I making eye contact? Am I in my light? Am I talking too much? Not talking enough? Does this costume make sense for this act? Is it painted properly? Because you're not thinking about the act. The act by day 4 is old hat. You know, you're just walking the sword ladder out of muscle memory. So you're thinking, was that guy in the front row? Did he yawn because he's tired or yawn because I'm boring? You're more engaged.
It's all about the audience, too, right? You're very concerned
especially in that venue. Because theater's much easier. They paid to see me or something like me. They at least had an inkling of what I'm doing, and they paid a ticket price. They paid 50 cents, and they were just walking by.
Yeah.
So you've got to write differently. You write like a busker or a street performer, constantly holding, constantly building, and then Scheherazade from 1001 Arabian Nights. You nest your stories. You nest your bits within your bits so that you never finish a thing because that's a signal to an audience to leave. So there's all that psychology going on when you write. You hold them in because they can leave at any time. It's fine, but they paid $1 to be there. They need to feel like they got their dollar's worth or they'll complain. Not to you so much, to the other patrons, and your box office will go down.
Yeah.
Which when you try and pay money in a carnival, you're never making a ton of cash. So if your receipts drop 10 or 20%, you don't make the rent.
Right.
And it can seriously hurt your entire crew. It's a very tough business to be. It's why I'm not in that business.
It must be. I mean, still today, right?
Very much so. No, there's like 2 or 3 touring sideshows of any size.
Yeah.
In America, 2 or 3 in Australia. Coney Island's on the point of closing down.
Right.
The Bindlestiff Family Circus still does some variety stuff in variety theaters, but not a ton.
Why do you think that is? Is there just too much other distraction?
Well, the economics changed quite a bit. There's a bit of distraction. You don't go to the carnival for the same reasons. People think the sideshow used to be like a little extra thing for the circus. The sideshow was 90% of the revenue when the circus came to town. We were the moneymakers. So imagine small town, picture middle of Iowa, right? Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the fair is there. The fair is a circus, no rides. It's 1940s, 1950s, no real rides at all. A couple of concessionaires and the sideshow. Right. So everyone shows up on Thursday. The big tent, the big show is packed. And say we'll use modern money, say $25 a ticket. That's what you paid. Well, you don't have that again for the rest of the week. You're the working man in the middle of Iowa. So what do you do on Friday? There's still only one thing to do. You've already seen the Jimmy Stewart picture at the one movie house in your town.
Yeah.
You come back. And now you do me for $1, and the fat man for $1, and the bearded lady for 50 cents. And you walk around and hang out on the lot. This is also true of the kids. So your kids may not have 25 bucks, but they got 5.
Yeah.
So they can get a corn dog and a nacho and see the fat man, and then kids just hang out in parking lots anyway.
Yeah.
So we end up getting every entertainment dollar you have, whereas the circus gets that 25. Anything below 25 is just left on the table. But we could get all the extra money you have to spend. That's the majority of your money. You know, that big ticket purchase isn't where the money is. You know, do they sell more iPods or Maseratis?
Right.
You know, those smaller amounts can really add up, and
fast.
we're high profit.
Yeah.
You know, one single exhibit, when I was doing it in New Brunswick, $300 or $400 a day, 50 cents at a time. So if you're a single operator and you're paying $100 a day,
Yeah.
that's a good working man's wage. Especially if you're independent, you own your own business.
Some of these people, like the Bearded Lady and Lobster Boy
Mm-hmm.
or whatever, you said they have some animosity, or you've sensed animosity toward from them toward people who are quote do-gooders and politically politically correct, I should say, trying to do away with the whole sideshow culture.
Yeah.
Maybe talk a little bit about
sure.
that and how it's affected them.
So I'm entirely prejudiced from the one side of the argument. I've gotten the freaks side of the argument out of this. So I try and see the other side. So there's undoubtedly, there were, I'm thinking of the pinheads, like Zippy. So these are folks born with a very oddly shaped head, microcephaly, I believe it's called, but they have a shrunken brain. These are mentally retarded individuals. There is no doubt with Zippy in particular, they were exploited. Sold almost like slaves, sold like property. Though you can sell contracts, we do it with NBA players, but they were sold like slaves.
Yeah.
No say over their working conditions or their costume. In fact, Zippy liked to dress in women's dresses for whatever reason, but he was a male, so they'd make him wear stuff he didn't want to wear. He was comfortable. If you see him in Todd Browning's Freaks, looks like a woman, a little ribbon on his hair. It's a guy. He just liked dresses. So undoubtedly there were people who were mentally and physically retarded who were exploited because of their disabilities. And then there were Grady Stiles. Grady Stiles killed a guy. He beat the crap out of him, the Lobster Man. He crawled across the floor at a bar. He was a bit of a rummy. Crawled across the floor and beat an able-bodied person to the floor. That guy doesn't need your help. That guy's doing just fine. No one's exploiting Grady Stiles. As much as he could be a bit of a roughhouser, no one's getting
And
on
yet
his,
someone's trying to yank his livelihood away.
Well, you're trying to fix a problem. There is a problem with Zippy. So how do you protect Zippy? And it's the broad swath.
Yeah.
So you shut down people with an IQ of 147 because they're a bearded lady who was running their own business, or they were a family of dwarves. But they were all very intelligent, or at least average intelligence, and they weren't being exploited. They owned their own business, swept up in that net.
I see.
Because the cases like Zippy are much more dramatic and pull on the heartstrings. And this is why I think the do-gooders are so maligned, is that idea of like, don't punish me because some other a-hole is exploiting some poor retarded kid. Punish that guy. Let's write a good law. Let's spend a couple of minutes and write a good law that punishes them and leaves me alone. And you went from the equivalent, and this is what I heard from Gene and Al Tomani's grandson, I think, just on a forum on the internet. He's the equivalent of 60, 70 grand a year to welfare. So when I say they took your living away,
Right.
Jean Tomani was a half woman, born with not much below the waist. Her husband, Al Tomani, a giant. They're the world's strangest married couple. And they went from making very good money and in a prestige business. Even if you only make 30, 35 grand a year, that's what actors make all the time. That's what priests barely make. And my brother runs a Baptist church. He's not minting gold coins.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a calling. It's a love. It's a passion. So you not only were making a good living, but you were doing something you enjoyed. And now you sit around the trailer in Gibsonton, Florida, and wait for the government to send you a check, which for that generation is particularly humiliating.
Yeah.
But especially if you were proud of the fact that though you were born different, you were still doing it.
Right.
And now I just made you handicapped with a law. I forced you to be handicapped. No, you can't work anymore. You're handicapped now.
Yeah.
I could see how I'd be a little pissed too.
Because the law wasn't more tailored, you mean? It was
More
too
tailored,
broad.
better written. It was hastily, and then it died just as quickly and really targeted the South for whatever reason. So it was also kind of geographically unfair in some way.
Let's talk a little bit about the comic influences in your life. Who did you grow up watching, and who do you find yourself sort of emulating a bit in your act today, in voice and tone, in social commentary?
Johnny Carson I grew up with. Definitely. I don't know how much I emulate Johnny Carson. I wish I could. I mean, just the interview style he had was amazing.
Was sort of the casual quality of his
comfortable? I think by the
comfortable?
time I saw him, also he'd been on TV for 50 years.
Yeah.
You know, he was probably more comfortable at that desk than he was at his house.
Sure, I believe that.
Yeah, and a lot of stories I've read about Carson say exactly
Yeah,
that
well,
too.
a lot of comics are more comfortable on stage
Yeah,
than they
yeah.
are.
I remember watching Carson when a joke would die. He seemed to almost revel in it.
Yeah.
Every time he would make a Lincoln joke, it wouldn't go over well, and he would put his hands in his pockets and run, too soon? He just didn't care, and I like that quality of
He
like,
could
I don't
always
give a crap.
revive a dead joke. You're
Tomorrow
right.
night I'll be fine. Next joke.
Yeah.
Letterman I grew up with a lot, and then George Carlin. Every single HBO special, probably starting from when I was 12 or 13.
He's a very linguistic comic.
amazing,
I mean,
amazing.
and you are too. So
Yeah.
you must have been highly influenced by
His
somebody like him.
openings, when he would do, it was hip hop. He would do a rap. He would open. Had he not been a comic, I think he would have been. If he were born now, I think he would be working with Macklemore.
Yeah.
Like I think he would be in that. I don't think he'd do comedy. I think he would have done music, because he would open with the linguistic trick, and there was no joke there. I also like the fact that Carlin would call out the frame in a way you're taught not to. He ends. What is the piece he ends with? It's not a place for your stuff, but it's a famous piece where at the end he goes, and lacking an ending, I simply take a small bow. He says that. That's his segue. That's his closer. And lacking an ending, I simply take a small bow. And the audience goes nuts.
Right.
You're taught when you write, don't do that. Write an ending. He couldn't come up with one.
Don't call attention to the fact that you don't have
says
anything.
it.
That's the right.
He also would intro his bits as if they were music.
Yeah.
He goes, you guys want to hear a place for your stuff? Okay, fine, here we go. You ever notice? Hey, no one does that. You're supposed to be in the moment pretending like you're having this completely natural conversation. Carlin didn't. And so I like the fact that he would break those rules. And then from Carlin, you wander into Richard Pryor, who was a genius. No one was more open on stage than Richard Pryor.
Yeah.
And that's probably the comic I wish I could pull the most from now. Because what I want to show that Richard Pryor did with his neighborhood. He was born to a prostitute. He grew up near whorehouses and near bums. And he did these characters. Right.
Yeah.
And with these characters that are not nice characters. They're not relatable characters. And he showed you their heart. And I would love to have his gift of doing that, to do it with my people.
Yeah.
To show you the heart of the lobster boy, to show you the heart, to really let you into their world in a way he did. Because I have nothing in common with any of those characters he talked about on stage. When he peopled a stage, they call it. I have nothing in common with those bums. I didn't grow up anywhere near where he grew up.
Yeah.
And yet I had empathy for them. I would love to do that to my audiences, to pull them into that world. And by the end, you feel like, yeah, I get it. I get why the bearded lady was important.
Well, you're so casual about everything. I mean, you'll do a little bit now and then, like, you know, the ouch or the, you know, because people, especially in that no exit venue, which is so intimate, we're right on top of you, watching you do this stuff. It's amazing.
You gotta see the new venue for September.
Yeah.
I'm doing 2 shows a night on Saturday. I'll put it on the website. You can find it on Facebook or whatever. 50 seats. I'm gonna set them up like a classroom almost.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So we're, instead of doing, I did it the same space before with like 100 seats. I decided to do 2 shows. So it's gonna be the same thing where you'll be 12 feet.
Are you going to add another element to it, or is it going to be Freak Show and Tell?
It's Freak Show and Tell, just in a similar to No Exit, just without those tables, so everybody's kind of closer.
Anyway, thank you for coming in.
Thank you for coming.
It was great talking to you. Best of luck with everything. And Tom's got a documentary that's going to be out pretty soon too, so look for that. Thanks a lot. See ya.